Good evening, everyone. My name is Ali Osborne, and welcome to Little Things Big USA. On this channel, we break down big concepts in American government and the American political system so that you don't have to deep dive into the Constitution to understand them. Today, I want to break down two things. The first is Donald Trump's $5,000 baby credit that he is proposing giving to women to bring the birth rate up in America. We have seen among people like J.D. Vance, Elon Musk, and what like the manosphere, the conservative right, um, increasing concern in the fact that America has a smaller birth rate than death rate, and as such, there is this idea that the population is eventually just going to enter into a net zero, which is not true for several reasons, but that's a concept for another video. So I want to be careful as I go into this because Kamala Harris did campaign on a child tax credit, on giving people a tax credit for having kids, especially new families. And I do agree with the concept that in this country, we need to support new families more. We need to help provide support to families so they can raise children and effectively care for and provide for their kids without entering into poverty or debt, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Right? I believe, especially as someone who's adopted, in giving kids the best chance they can. That is what my birth family did for me. So, I add that in so you understand that I do have a bit of a personal stake in this debate. But here's the problem, in my opinion. Here is the problem with this child tax credit that Donald Trump is proposing. It costs, on average, $275,000 to raise a child from birth to being 18, not to mention the hundreds of thousands of dollars that a college education is going to cost. That's assuming that kids are not, like me, adopted, which then adds thousands of more dollars in legal fees and court fees and processing to finalize an adoption. That also does not take into account things like infertility, where people will go to get IVF and fertility treatments, and obviously, the government does not pay for those things, and those things are not cheap, and insurance will rarely cover them. Which, again, the problem with the insurance industry is a whole conversation for another video where I will break down the problem with monetizing healthcare. So, herein lies my problem in Trump's $5,000 baby bonus. Because Donald Trump is cutting things like SNAP and Medicaid, is not providing affordable childcare, affordable medical care, affordable housing, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, and is cutting programs designed to help bring underrepresented communities into higher paying careers. For example, there has recently been a cut to a program that was helping bring deaf people into STEM careers, right? Which kind of addresses the broader concept that Donald Trump is attacking of DEI, where he's attempting to bring back this concept of meritocracy to the United States. Now, meritocracy and DEI, as anyone with common sense knows, are not antithetical concepts. DEI is not bringing in an underqualified person from an underrepresented community to replace a qualified white person. The goal of white man. The goal there is to bring qualified people from underrepresented communities so that the playing field becomes more level. Essentially, what DEI does is it broadens the net that is being cast by hiring managers, by universities, by government agencies attempting to hire people because diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives, especially under the Biden administration, mostly focus on hiring in the federal government. So the goal is to bring, I'm just going to throw out a random example here. Let's say there is a equally qualified, um, let's say neuroscientist. Both of them graduated from the same good school, equal qualifications, around the same age. One of them is a white man. The other is a woman from Southeast Asia. Let's go ahead and, in the hypothetical scenario where we don't have DEI and there are no initiatives in place to stop people from not hiring the woman from Southeast Asia solely because she is a woman from Southeast Asia, the white man is going to get hired. That is the nature of capitalism in America, right? The purpose of DEI is to bring those underrepresented communities up into that same net so that they have the opportunity to be hired too, not over the white person, but are afforded equal consideration. The effect of DEI and the effect of these efforts in an ideal world will lower unemployment, and as such, will I'm going to go into a brief tangent. No one in the world is against family values. No one in the world thinks that family is a bad thing. I just want to go ahead and say that, right? The left does not think that family values are a terrible thing. The purpose of DEI helps promote family values because when qualified people from underrepresented communities get well paying jobs, they lower the unemployment rate. That helps promote family unity. It helps promote engagement in the economy. It helps promote education. And because of that, things like education and equal opportunity and engagement in the economy break the cycle of poverty. In breaking the cycle of poverty, we help bring the American economic structure up for everyone, including white people. There's this concept that the left hates white men and hates white people because they want to bring people from other communities into the spotlight. That is an inherently racist notion. To say that you hate one group of people because you are willing to afford equal rights to another is, for one, bigoted, and two, idiotic. Civil rights are not a pie. When black people got the right to vote, white people didn't lose the right to vote, but they were forced to have an equal voice with black people, which in the minds of the white people, racist white people at the time, not all white people, but in the minds of the racist white people at the time, was a lowering of their civil rights and their standing or pedigree in society, when it was in fact a raising of black people's pedigree or status in society, which is stupid because we're all humans. There is no genetic concept of race. Anyway, so the inherent issue with this $5,000 baby bonus is the fact that it is presented under the veneer of family values and promoting raising the birth rate when in fact it does not address the issues that are causing the birth rate to be lower. People, and I'm going to use the stereotypical example here, millennials are having less kids because millennials were raised under an economic system where, in some cases, they did not get adequate support from their parents, either financially or emotionally, because of poverty, and as such, are not having kids because they don't want the responsibility or because they want to gallivant around the world, but because they understand that they should not raise children if they are not financially and emotionally in a place to do so. That is responsibility. That is the promotion of family values. Now, rant over. So that's kind of the inherent veneer and problem with this $5,000 tax credit. There are, not tax credit, bonus, there are more problems with that, but we're going to break down in another video as we explain things like healthcare inequity. Um, but that's for a later conversation because I don't want this video to get to be the point where it's too long. And if I go on a tangent for too long, my ADHD brain is going to steer us all through the problems in America's political system, and we'll be here for likely several days. Um, okay, so the second thing I want to talk about is there is a report that is detailing new details about the agreement that Donald Trump and the Trump administration made with El Salvador to take migrants from the United States and deport them. And I'm going to break down that agreement as well in a later video, but I do want to highlight and focus on this one thing that I thought was really interesting. So, the Trump administration pledged roughly $15 million in foreign funding to El Salvador in exchange for them taking people who are reportedly associated with the game Tren de Aragua, right? The problem with that and the way that they're doing it is that $15 million was not paid all up front. That $15 million is being paid in the form of payment via individual people being sent, essentially placing a bounty on the heads of migrants to be sent to El Salvador. As such, we're kind of, let me think about how I want to use this analogy. We are essentially incentivizing a foreign government to come in and promote the removal of migrants from our country. As such, when we do so, we are taking that group of people and applying a monetary value to their freedom and, in some cases, their lives. On top of these stereotypes that are already being taken by this administration and placed onto migrants, that they are dangerous, that they are criminals, that they are unqualified, they're low lives, right? We are essentially seeing the creation of the undesirables in society. The problem with that, and this is kind of an inherent problem that humanity has always and likely will always deal with unless we address it actively. The problem with that is that when you take a person in front of you and you apply a monetary value to their life or apply a stereotype to that person, a human being in front of you, without recognizing their dignity and their worth as a human as we are all endowed by our creators, right? When you do that, you take the value of that person's life and reduce it just a little bit. You've applied monetary value. You have watered down a three-dimensional human to a slightly less three-dimensional human, which is a weird analogy, but you take my meaning. You have reduced the value of that life, of the life of the person in front of you, just a little bit. If you do that enough to enough people over enough time, that is how genocide starts. That is how ethnic cleansing and apartheid happen. That's how the Holocaust happened. Hitler slowly reduced the value of disabled people, of Jewish people, of homosexual people. I'm using a term from the time. I don't call gay people homosexuals. Um, Hitler took that and reduced their value and portrayed them as the enemy. Donald Trump campaigned on a phrase, the enemy among us, right? That is, for one, just this draconian concept, but two, is almost directly taken from the way that Hitler talked about the Jews. The Jews were the enemy in Germany. They were running the financial system in Germany to keep Germany under sanctions and poor after World War One. That was the basic, there was more to it, but the basic concept and messaging behind Hitler's message about Jewish people. In doing so, what Hitler did was he took the value of Jewish people and Jewish lives and shrunk them slowly over time until things like the Holocaust happened. And first, he took people no one would miss. He took the disabled people, he took intellectually disabled people, he took undesirables that people already didn't really view as people at the time, and pulled them from Germany, put them into those internment camps, and committed unspeakable atrocities over the course of his reign over Germany. And Poland and France, obviously, and the other countries that Nazi Germany took over. Because of that, when he was able to do those things, we've all heard I they came for the disabled people and I did not speak up, and then when they came for me, there was no one to speak for me. Because of that, Hitler desensitized the German public to those atrocities. That is a hallmark of the authoritarian bargain. That you take people and you disappear them because you create this veneer that society is going so well and everything's becoming more efficient and more idyllic for the people who you value, who you would never go after, right up until the authoritarian government goes after them. By applying those stereotypes and by applying monetary value to the lives of migrants in this country, Donald Trump is perpetuating the same cycle that led to the Holocaust. I'm not saying that Donald Trump is going to cause a holocaust of migrants, but I'm also not saying that that's impossible. If we as Americans do not speak up for the values upon which this country was founded, and before I hear the argument, yes, I know Thomas Jefferson had slaves. Thomas Jefferson also wrote that his ideals of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness for all people in America were a goal. They were a dream for what America would be. Thomas Jefferson had opinions on the fact that he owned slaves. He was not morally comfortable with it. That does not by any means excuse the fact that he took human beings and enslaved them. It does not. But even Jefferson, who knew that, knew it was wrong, and wrote it as an aspiration for this country. So those are the ideals upon which this country was founded. If we as Americans do not use the voices that we are given, I'm going to backing up a little bit. The phrase life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, Thomas Jefferson paraphrased John Locke. He was an Enlightenment thinker who wrote that people are entitled to life, liberty, and property, right? Now, in colonial America, the concept of property was a controversial one, and white men didn't want their property messed with. So Jefferson took happiness, and he took happiness as the Greeks defined it. Now, the Greeks defined happiness as, in a political sense, as a government that worked for the people. It's where the concept of a government for the people, by the people was derived. Jefferson wanted that for all people, a government that worked for the people. And John Locke wrote that government only exists via the consent of the governed. We as the American people have the power to revoke our consent via civil disobedience. Obviously, the most important by voting, but also using our voices. If we do not, America, every person who does not use their voice to combat the backslide of American liberty is complicit in her destruction. Anyways, that's all for today. Thank you for tuning in to this episode of Little Things Big. My name is Ali Osborne, and I'll see you in another.